Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Celebrating the Scaife Bequest virtual program that is being brought to you this evening by the Brandywine Conservancy and Museum of Art that's based in Chadds Ford in Eastern Pennsylvania, and the Westmoreland Museum of American Art in Greensburg. Of course, the magic of Zoom allows us to bring the two sides of the state together to honor and recognize the 10th anniversary of Richard Scaife's incredibly generous gifts to the Brandywine and the Westmoreland. My name is Melissa Reckner, and I'm the program manager at Penguin Court, which is now a preserve of the Brandywine Conservancy. This evening, I'm joined by Mary Cronin, the Director of Audience Engagement at the Brandywine Museum of Art, and Erica Knuckles, the Director of Learning, Engagement, and Partnerships at the Westmoreland Museum of American Art. I presume by your attendance this evening that you already have some knowledge of Richard Scaife's philanthropy and his love of art and nature. Mr. Scaife said, "Beautiful art, paintings, music, literature, whatever, can transform our moods, lighten our hearts, make us think or change our minds, inspire us to be creative, or live better lives." Mary, if you would advance a slide, please. Well, I personally didn't know Mr. Scaife. I think he's the bee's knees for his thoughtfulness of wanting to make art more available to the public and for wanting Penguin Court and the nearby Thomas Road Farm preserved for their conservation value. He knew long before he passed away that he wanted to make these gifts to the Brandywine and the Westmoreland, and he laid the groundwork for this to happen before his passing on July 4th, 2014, a day after his 82nd birthday. I'm often asked why Brandywine, given its geographic distance from Mr. Scaife's home here in Western Pennsylvania. And I always share that Mr. Scaife was friends with Frolic Weymouth, a founder of Brandywine Conservancy, and he was a longtime trustee of Brandywine, serving as a trustee for over 3 decades. And he was on the development committee from 1985 until his death in 2014, so 29 years. Brandywine officially took ownership of Penguin Court and the Thomas Road Farm in 2015, and so this evening's program was kind of a kickoff to celebrate and recognize the 10th anniversary of this gifts, to Brandywine and the Westmoreland, and share with you how Mr. Scaife's gifts have impacted both groups. Before I turn it over to Erica and Mary, who are going to get us started this evening, please note that the program will be recorded and shared with registrants a week or two from now. And if you made a donation, thank you. Your proceeds support both organizations and allows us to keep our virtual programs pay what you wish so that anyone may participate. And then finally, as we go through the evening, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to as many as possible at the end of our presentation. So with that, Mary, I turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. This is a story of a generous and unusual gift. It's not that unusual for a board member to donate works of art to a museum, but to have a board member of 2 institutions leave his collection to both museums and then ask them to select the works for their collection one by one, one at a time, is highly unusual. When Mr. Scaife collected these works, he wasn't thinking of an eventual display in a museum. These works were collected for his personal enjoyment, to hang in his homes, but they've also brought great enrichment to the collections of 2 of these museums, Brandywine and Westmoreland.
He requested that the 2 museums select works one at a time, with Brandywine getting the first pick. This was unusual to have 2 museums select art in this way, but the process also shows Scaife's long experience with the art world, to understand that each museum's staff should be able to select the works that would best add to and complement their institution's existing collections. The collection shows Scaife's passion for American art and the range of his tastes as a collector. Each museum gathered a team of experts who gathered in Western Pennsylvania in a facility that was used by the Westmoreland as a temporary home, as the museum was undergoing a major renovation and had to be in an alternate location during that time. The initial visit involved 3 full days of careful looking and list making. Selections were then refined over several months.
In early December 2014, representatives from each museum came together to make the actual selections. And the photo that you see here, you can see Frolic Weymouth, who Melissa mentioned was a friend of Richard Scaife's. He was then the chairman of the board of Brandywine, and here he is looking at one of the works. And Frolic was joined by executive director Ginny Logan, who can be seen standing next to him in the picture on the right, as well as Brandywine's museum director, Thomas Payden. This important gift was something that Frolic Weymouth cultivated for many years. He first met Richard Scaife through a shared interest in coaching or carriaging. And the opportunity to expand Brandywine's landscape holdings to include American artists who painted outside of the Brandywine Valley was an important step for Brandywine's future, to be able to put Brandywine's work into context through the collection that Frolic Weymouth was aware that Richard Scaife had. So he did cultivate this gift from his friend. Frolic was ill, actually, at the time of the final selection, but he would not have missed going in person to help make these choices. For Brandywine, in terms of how they went about this, our director, Tom Payden, had 2 large binders of images, plus all the paintings were in a file on his computer. And Tom remembers as the moment drew near to start making the choices, tensions were heightened. His computer froze. And at that moment, Frolic grabbed the binders and started rearranging things that were in there. So it just added to the drama of the moment. Yeah, that's how it started.
So this slide shows a bulletin board approach that the Westmoreland staff used during the selection process. And there were many reasons for the selection, and it varied and included a number of factors like the quality of a work, the prominence of an artist, to fill in holes in the collection, the relationship to the existing permanent collection, regional interest, which is a strong part of the collection at the Westmoreland. We have a lot of Southwestern Pennsylvania art, underrepresented artists like women, and even size was a criteria at times for the selection per Judy O'Toole, who was the director of the Westmoreland at the time, to fill a space or to fit into a space, because as I mentioned, the Westmoreland was under a big renovation at the time. And so, being able to look at many, many different factors. And Mary, you can go to the next slide. Now, there were a few works that were not included in the selection process, including 5 paintings by self-taught artist John Kane, who was a Scottish immigrant who lived and painted in Pittsburgh. Mr. Scaife had given special designation in his will that these works go to the Westmoreland due to the institution's location and that focused area of the collection on regional art and artists. And you can go to the next slide. So these are 2 of the 5 canes from the Bequest. And these are 2 that are currently on view in our special exhibition, The Great Search, Art in a Time of Change, 1928 to 1945, that will be up until September of 2025 if you want to come and see these beautiful John Kanes yourself.
So moving on to the works that were part of the selection process. I can't imagine this, but this is how the room was set up. They had the executors of Mr. Scaife's will sitting at a table with a large barrier in between the Westmoreland team and the Brandywine team. And I'm assuming the Westmoreland team, maybe that was a calmer side of the room, since the bulletin board approach couldn't freeze up or get changed as easily, perhaps. But as what happened on the Brandywine side. But at any rate, Tom Payton also remembers at times when a selection would be made that you'd hear unhappy groans from the other side of the wall. So people were picking things that other people were hoping to get. And here are the two directors. Maybe this gives you a better idea of the energy that was happening. On the left is Judy O'Toole, and on the right is Tom Payton. This was actually a publicity shot that they did for a program that they did later. So they really didn't come to blows in any way over the selection process. But as you can see, they had a lot of fun with it. It really, I think it was fun to be able to be adding to the collection in such a dramatic way. Tom remembers that everyone actually was very cordial and friendly. And at the conclusion of the first day, over 100 works had been selected. And the two teams gathered for celebratory champagne, and they actually selected the rest of the works via phone call.
And interest was really high in both communities across Pennsylvania, as you might imagine. And here's an article from the Pittsburgh Tribune Review discussing the bequest and process used for dividing the work. I mean, it's such an interesting story. Just really amazing to think about this being sort of like the NFL draft of art. And shown here are, again, Westmoreland Museum director at the time, Judith O'Toole, and Brandywine's museums director, Thomas Padon, and Brandywine executive director, Virginia Logan. Through Scaife's bequest, these works of art have become available for public use. And that is just the biggest gift that could be given to all of us, to be able to see so many amazing works and have them accessible to the public. So it's a wonderful story.
Next one up. Before we tell you kind of how this actually unfolded, we wanted to give everyone a chance to pick what you might have selected. I guess this is going to block the view a bit, but can you see the choices here? There are 4 works of art. Are you able to see that? And you should be able to vote. Let's see if anyone's able to vote. Let me see. I don't see anyone voting yet. Let me see.
Oh, it just came up now, Mary.
It just came out. Good. Okay. If you're able to vote, 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'm sorry that this is right in the way of the picture, but you'll just have to guess what the rest of it looks like. But I can see that people are definitely making selections. Number 1 is by George Innes, 2 by Martin Johnson Heed, 3 by Jasper Cropsey, and 4 by Edward Willis Redfield. And give it just another minute, because it looks like a few people are still voting. All right. Let me see if I can share the results here. Are you able to see those results? So it looks like very narrowly, Martin Johnson Heed is the winner, with Jasper Cropsey second. And then in a tie for third, George Innes and Redfield. And certainly all these are worthy works of art. Let's move on and we can see what happened when they actually made the first selection. So here are, in fact, the 2 works that were selected first, and those were both part of your choice a moment ago. And Brandywine received the first selection because the Kane works had been already specified to be given to Westmoreland. So then it was decided that Brandywine would have the first choice. And with that first choice, Brandywine chose this beautiful work on the right by Martin Johnson Heed, New Jersey Salt Marsh. And just thinking about why they might have selected this, I mean, you can see visually why they might have selected it. It truly is just a gem when you see it in person. It really glows. He was a very prominent artist. He was new to Brandywine's collection. And Brandywine, he has connections to the Hudson River School, which was true for some other artists who were already in Brandywine's collection, such as Asher B. Duran and Jasper Cropsey. He was born actually outside of Philadelphia in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And as you might be able to guess from looking at this work, he was known for his ability to capture fleeting effects of atmosphere and light. He was a bit unusual in choosing to depict salt marshes, which were a flat landscape feature. Usually artists will paint a forest or paint a mountain or a river or something a little more dramatic. But Heed was a hunter and fisherman, and he painted these various salt marshes of New England and New Jersey in a range of weather, probably due to his familiarity from being in that terrain as being out hunting and fishing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I'll pass it on to Erica.
Yeah, the Westmoreland selected this very beautiful Moonrise Alexandria Bay by George Innes. Just an absolutely captivating, I mean, who doesn't love a moonrise? And this is actually one of my favorite works in the collection. It's not currently on view, but it's frequently on view here at the Westmoreland. And it depicts a region of New York in the Thousand Islands. And so a wonderful first selection for the Westmoreland.
And with the second selection, these two works were selected, a bit more different than the first two in terms of just comparing them one to the other. In this case, Brandywine selected the work on the left, this John Frederick Kensett, beautiful view of the Hudson River. This painting is actually very small in size. If you were to see it in person, it's rather small on the wall, but the artist vision here is really a broad vista of the Hudson River Valley. And it really does look beautiful in person. I'll let Erica tell us about
your
choice.
Then the Westmoreland selected for their second choice this William Merritt Chase interior oak manor, a fabulous Gilded Age interior. With those suits of armor, and I think the Gilded Age is a pretty hot topic with the show right now and everything. So to be able to sort of imagine what these homes were like, and every time I look at this one, which this one was also up recently as well, it just sort of takes me to Pittsburgh during the industrial age, and as if you're getting a glimpse into the homes of those industrial magnates of of Pittsburgh, and by an absolutely wonderful artist, William Merritt Chase.
And getting down to the third selection, two amazing works. Brandywine went in a very different direction here, selecting the work on the right by Guy Penet-Dubois, The Appraisal. And this is a work that fits nicely with Brandywine's collection of illustration. It's not an illustration, but it has a narrative quality. When you encounter this painting in the gallery, you start wondering, like, who are these people and what is being appraised? You're not really exactly sure. Are they looking at furniture? Are they looking at a person? You're not really sure. What are they evaluating? The painting has an alternate title, which is Father and Daughter. So that gave me a very different perspective when I heard that. It wasn't because I really wasn't sure that was what I was looking at. So the artist, Guy Penet-Dubois, created satiric paintings of society, men and women. He presented shrewd observations, some biting, some humorous, of upper class manners and fashionable styles. And so this is a classic example of a social encounter. And you're just not exactly sure, but you can sort of fill in details on your own of what might be happening in this scene. Go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, I can imagine some great thought bubbles coming out of that one. It's fabulous. And we received this fantastic Jasper Crosby of Staruka Viaduct, which is a stone arch bridge that spans Staruka Creek near Lanesboro, Pennsylvania, in Northeast PA. And it's a very large painting, and this has been up frequently as well, and we've used it in many different exhibitions and installations. Students particularly love this one, especially when we do our sort of jump in exercise, or we're looking at ways to teach Pennsylvania history and the changing landscape. We also had a soundscape made of this painting, which really brings it a bit to life too. And it was also recently part of a special installation we did called Creating Common Memory, in partnership with Hayden Haynes, who's Onondaga Deer Clan, and is the director of the Seneca Iroquois National Museum. And we had him interpret this piece and other works from our permanent collection from his perspective. So we've been able to use this in many, many different ways. And it's just a wonderful teaching tool for us here at the Westmoreland.
I have to agree. When we borrowed this painting, it really is a knockout. It's a large painting, so it's a wonderful teaching tool. And at Brandywine, one of the themes that we used it to interpret was art and nature. We really were able to look at the art, look at the artist out in nature, but also think about the changing landscape, not only the changing season, which Cropsey is showing us, but also what's changing as a result of man's presence in the landscape. So all those pieces are there. Brandywine might have selected this one, except that we have a Jasper Cropsey in our collection, Autumn on the Brandywine. That's a beautiful piece. So I think there was some feeling that this one could then, we wouldn't be greedy. We'd let Westmoreland have this one. Also, it's a more western, further west scene, right? Okay. So the fourth selection, Brandywine added this work on the left by Albert Bierstadt, Coast of California. So this was interesting. Brandywine returned to this theme of landscape. Bierstadt is a prominent artist known for his monumental scenes of the American West. This particular work is quite small in format. It's 14 by 19 inches. We know that the artist traveled to California and he made sketches and studies, and this is likely one of his plein air studies, it's thought. And the work relates well to other artists in Brandywine's collection who also worked outdoors at times, including Andrew Wyeth.
And we got our own Guy Penne Dubois in the next round. And this one, Rose Madder Club, is currently in our exhibition, The Great Search, as well. And it's a really fun story of the scene here. The artists, like students and followers, called themselves the Rose Madder Club, which was named for the color the artist used in many of his paintings. And their annual dinner was at the Lafayette Hotel in New York City, and that's what's being depicted in this painting. So how fun to have followers who form their own club and have parties.
And then here we are at the fifth selection. Brandywine selected this beautiful work of American Impressionism by Theodore Robinson on the right of the Yacht Club Basin. And that was a desire of Brandywine to be able to add some works, some American Impressionist works to the collection. That was a style that influenced N.C. Wyeth. And so it was interesting to be able to add some of this work to be able to be shown in the same museum as N.C. Wyeth's work.
And the Westmoreland got this John Frederick Kensett, Twilight on the Seashore. And again, this one is also currently on view. It's in a show called The Treasures from the National Academy of Design. And this will be up actually until 2027. So we'll have this up for quite a while. And it's a great addition to that show. that we could draw from our own collection, thanks to the bequest.
And we won't belabor this because both museums were so enriched by the bequest, but there were a few regrets, I'm told. And so these were two works, this work by Bosley on the left and Metcalf on the right. These were two works that went to Westmoreland that Brandywine would like to have had.
And the Westmoreland does regret not getting these two wonderful works. Another by Kensett, and then this beautiful one of Raspberries by Lily Martin Spencer. We're always looking to add women to our collection, as many museums are, women artists. But we are happy to say that in 2022, we did acquire our own Lily Martin Spencer, but it's a painting of different fruit. It is Still Life with Apples from 1891. So we were able to, continue our push to diversify the collection, including women artists. And along those lines, because of this bequest, we were able to add 6 women artists to the Westmoreland's permanent collection from the bequest. And this year in 2025, we're celebrating the Year of Women Artists. So I'm going to share a few of those, including this one by Lila Bar Hetzel. If you're not familiar, she is the daughter of George Hetzel of the Scalpe Level School of Art. She's a Pittsburgh artist, so we got additional female artist added to the collection from this, and also a Pittsburgh regional artist as well. And if you go to the next slide, Mary, here's another work by a female artist by Gertrude Fisk, Girl with Turkeys. And she was a regional artist from like the Boston, New England area, and was the first woman appointed to the Massachusetts State Art Commission in 1929. So a little bit of a trailblazer there. And then the next slide, please. And then another Pittsburgh artist, Rachel McClellan Sutton, with just these very charming scenes of Pittsburgh in the first part of the 20th century. And then in addition to these, we were able to also acquire works by Laura May Adams Arman and Marin Margareta Frolic. So it was, some things that help us to continue diversifying the collection, and especially this year, help us to celebrate the Year of Women Artists. Right, so both of the museums had the wonderful opportunity to display the work in a joint exhibition at the Westmoreland in 2018, seen here as The Art of Giving. And I was able to find the text from the title panel, and I just want to read just a couple of sentences from it, because I think it really, captures the wonderful spirit of this process, and then being able to share our acquisitions with each other across the state. What could have been a competitive situation between two museums to divide a collection instead became one of camaraderie and mutual engagement. Both museums gained masterworks of American art that were right for the separate needs of their collections. 4 years later, seeing these 50 paintings come together for the first time allows our visitors insight into the collecting vision of both museums, as well as the excellence and range of Mr. Scaife's collecting tastes.
Very nice. And at Brandywine, this same exhibition was entitled American Beauty in 2019. And Brandywine also featured, it wasn't in 2019. It was before that, I think. And Brandywine also featured many of the landscape paintings in a small exhibition in 2016 as well. And when the works were on view at Brandywine, you saw that earlier picture of the two museum directors, Judy O'Toole and Tom Payden. They shared this whole process before a packed house at Brandywine, just talking about their experience and how they selected the work. So that was a lot of fun, and an in-person public program. And I'm just going to go back to a couple highlights from the works that Brandywine got, and just putting this one up again just so you can see it full screen. It really is so amazing, and not surprising that it was the first work selected. And this gift, as well as the other gifts, really added significant depth, in particular to Brandywine's landscape holdings. And it's allowed for connections to be drawn between artists of the Brandywine region and a wider spectrum of American art. And this is one of the works I put up there in that poll earlier that did pretty well, tied for third. This lovely American Impressionist work by Edward Redfield, who was a leader of the New Hope School of Pennsylvania Impressionism. This is a summer scene in Boothbay Harbor, Maine, thus those really amazing colors. And then one last work to share, which Erica mentioned, this Lily Martin Spencer of raspberries. Brandywine is known for its collection, a very strong collection of American still life painting. And but we did not have an early example of a still life painting by a woman. So getting this for the collection was very important. And Lily Martin Spencer was a well-respected painter at a time when women rarely rose to the level of professional artist. She had some recognition during her lifetime. Her work was shown at the National Academy of Design and at the Women's Pavilion of the Philadelphia Centennial in 1876. Her popular success, the money that she made for her family actually, came from widely sold engravings of her work, which made works like this accessible to middle-class Americans. And here's just a few images of some of the Scaife works on the wall in the gallery at Brandywine. And I would encourage you sometime to come and visit Brandywine. You'll find a rotating number of these landscape works on view, integrated well with the rest of Brandywine's permanent collection. And this work should be on view at least through the end of March. And then again, probably again starting in August.
Yes, and we are frequently rotating our collection as well. And these are a few more, aside from the ones I already mentioned, that are currently on view, including, starting in the top left, this Louis Kronberg. It's a fabulous woman with a parrot, and it's in a show right now called All the Right Notes, which explores the connection between music and art, sometimes music as muse, music in art, which is a wonderful show we have. The top right is a Charles Courtney Curran that is also in that exhibition I mentioned, The Great Search, Art in a Time of Change, 1928 to 1945, as is the bottom left, which is an Aidan Lassell Ripley. And that one is really wonderful too, because we have a fantastic collection of industrial art from our region as well, really sort of celebrating and exploring the history of the steel industry and the coal mines. And so this really helps us to tell that story as well. And the bottom right is a Samuel Griggs that's in our historical gallery, and is a wonderful scene of a home. So we often have many works that were from this bequest on display. And it just allows us to tell so many stories of American art. And then this is an image of one of our paneled rooms that we have at the Westmoreland. And this is a nice bridge for us to connect to the story Melissa is about to share. This large wooden paneled room was originally from a home in London circa 1750, but it ended up being shipped over to the United States and was actually a room at the Scaife's family home, Penguin Court in Ligonier. And when that home was taken down in the 1960s, this room was then moved to the Westmoreland, and the Westmoreland had originally opened just in 1959. And by the 1960s, that was when the first expansion was already being done on the museum, and it was to accommodate this and a smaller paneled room, but this one is from Penguin Court. And so it just shows that long relationship that the Scaifes have had with our institutions. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Melissa Reckner to tell us more about this fascinating history of Penguin Court.
Super. Thank you, Erica, and Mary too. That is a perfect segue to introduce you to Penguin Court, which I wish I could see your faces, or maybe I should have done a poll too to see how many of you have heard of Penguin Court, or maybe by now you have actually visited Penguin Court. But Penguin Court is a 923-acre tract of land that's located in Laughlin Town, Westmoreland County. Mary, if you would advance one slide, please. You will see this yellow outline is the boundary of Penguin Court. The red line at the top of the picture is Route 30, which goes from east to west. And if you're familiar with the area, you would know the rather infamous pie shop, which is just off the top of the map where the red line goes off the picture. There's a yellow or red blinking light on 30, depending on the direction you're coming. And at that light, you would turn south onto California Avenue, past Rolling Rocks Golf Course, which you can see the pock marks, the sand pits there to the left of the photo. And you come down about a mile down that road, and Penguin Court would be located to the left. So we are not a part of Rolling Rock Country Club. We're just neighbors, but that's a good landmark for finding us. Penguin Court is managed as a private preserve. So we're not open from dawn to dusk for you to stop by whenever you'd like several of the state parks and state forests around us are, but rather just whenever we have targeted programs that the property is available to use for. Next slide, please. So here's a portrait of Mr. Scaife with two of his dogs. Like I said earlier, it was long determined that he would gift Penguin Court and the art to Brandywine Conservancy. But with Penguin Court, he wanted the property held exclusively for its wildlife or its conservation value, even though there used to be a big old home, which if you advance to the next slide, Mary, it'll show you a screenshot of the mansion that once sat on Penguin Court. This was one of Richard's childhood homes. It was his parents, Alan and Sarah Scaife, who had this 67-room mansion constructed in the late 1930s. It was designed by Alfred Hopkins, who I read also designed Heartwood Acres in Pittsburgh. I've not been there yet myself, but I heard it kind of gives you the same vibe for how Penguin Court would have felt. And interestingly, Alfred Hopkins also designed several prisons, but that was to make them more humane. And then just like Lily Spencer being one of the few female artists to do still lifes, Annette Hoyt Flanders was one of very few female landscape architects, and the Scaifes employed her to design a lot of the formal gardens around the mansion. Next, please. So here are some pictures of the mansion, both inside and out. You can see it was built out of limestone block inside and out. There was a lot of oak trim, tapestries on the wall, oak furnishings, antique furnishings from the 17th century. And Richard said in his memoirs that growing up here, the house was always kind of cold and chilly just because of those limestone blocks, and he felt like he was living in a museum. So he didn't necessarily love the house, but he said the nail in the coffin for the house was the fact that after his parents passed away, his dad passed first and then his mother in, I believe, 1965, and he was going through their things. He found a letter that his mother had written to his father where she basically said, "I hate this house." And he thought, well, I don't love it either. And both he and his sisters, they were adults. They had their own homes. They didn't need another mansion. And so the house was torn down in the late 1960s. And if you advance one slide, please, Mary, you can see an aerial of what that mansion site looks like now. The conservatory in the top corner was not present in the 1960s. That came later, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But what's neat is we are currently working on a project using augmented reality that will recreate how the mansion looked within that open space that's kind of, forward in the picture is where the mansion would have been. Because for me, it's hard to imagine how a 67-room mansion that was 4 stories fit in this space. And so we received a grant to pay a consultant to figure out how to make it so that when you visit Penguin Court, you can whip out your smartphone or an iPad and ping certain markers and see how the exterior of the house fit within that space. So I'm really excited. That should be ready by late spring and certainly summer this year. So you'll have to be sure to visit Penguin Court during one of our tour days for that. Mary, advance, please. There are some remnants of the mansion still on the property. The photo on the right shows the outline of the pool, which was a big open pit when I was hired, but over time, Brandywine had that filled in and is actually being planted right now, last year and then this spring and summer to make a garden in that space. And then when you visit, I take you on a tour to the pool changing rooms, which are pictured there on the left. They might look familiar if you've seen Netflix's movie, The Pale Blue Eye, because this was one of the filming locations for that movie that's based off of a novel of the same name by Louis Baynard. Next slide, please. You also then get to see some wonderful statues. Some are a little weird, frankly, but we'll investigate those one day. Right now, they are shrouded under a cover to protect them from the winter weather, but that's another reason we don't do our tours until late May, summer, and fall when they're uncovered and you can see them in their full glory. But what you can see 365 days a year are some fantastic views, which, next slide, please, shows you one of my favorite views in all the seasons, even winter. And that is looking west towards Chestnut Ridge. And if you have a keen eye, you can just make out the divot in the far horizon. That's Loyal Hannah Gorge along Chestnut Ridge to kind of orient yourself. So I really love just standing at this intersection of the main drive and this gravel driveway that you see in the foreground, because that's typically how the weather moves in. So it's really neat to watch the mountains get enveloped in rain or snow and, then take shelter. Next slide, please. Yes, so true to Mr. Scaife's wishes, like I said, he wanted the land conserved for its wildlife value. And even though he didn't love the house, he certainly loved the property and he visited frequently whenever he was in town. And here are some of the examples of wildlife that I can't say regularly, but, with some frequency see on the property, from an abundance of deer and turkey to coyotes. Bobcats I get really excited about whenever we capture those or see them. Bears will forever excite me. Turtles hold a special spot in my heart. And this guy actually only had 3 legs, so I'm hoping we see him again. And then, of course, a plethora of pollinators, amphibians, and reptiles. Next slide, please. Of course, the big question is, why Penguin Court? And I've been told 2 stories. One was that Sarah Scaife just really loved penguins. And back in the day, you could call a guy and say, I'd like a dozen penguins, please. And they literally had 10 African penguins at their home here in Penguin Court that they kept kind of as pets. They were very well tended. As you can see, this is one of 3 stone igloos that were constructed for the penguins. And I was told during the worst of summer heat, which of course summers then weren't nearly as hot as they are now, they would pack the igloos with ice to keep the penguins cool. And if we were able to determine from a little home video, which the solo penguin picture is a snapshot from, that these were African penguins, which live off of the coast of South Africa, so they don't need as much cold and ice as other species. So I'd like to think that they, did well here, but I have a gazillion questions about the penguins that sadly nobody really has the answers to anymore. The second story I heard was that Sarah Scaife threw Admiral Richard Byrd a social fundraiser at Penguin Court, and he brought the penguins to kind of be the novelty of the night because, of course, back in the 30s was when he was making his expeditions to the Arctic, and the whole nation was rallying behind that initiative. And like I said, he brought them to be the cool thing of the evening, and then he let Sarah Scaife keep them as a thank you. So which is true, we may never know, and there might be a third story out there. And if you have one, please get in touch with me because I really do want to learn more about the penguins. I was able to determine, because I have an acquaintance who works within the zoo system, and they have a big database that tracks where their animals come from and where they go. And there are no records of Scaife penguins making it into the zoo. Next picture, please. So these are photos of the greenhouse that's on the property that was built in the mid-1950s by Lord and Burnham Design. And the Scaifes used to use it to grow things that would make for pretty cut flower arrangements or veggies that would be used in recipes. But now that Brandywine owns it, we use it to grow native plants that we offer for sale to the public in the spring and in the summer. Next, please. Here you can see we're already starting to sow several flats. The photo on the right was taken last year. We're not that far along yet, given the cool and rather wintry winter that we have had, but I'm hoping to have our plant sale websites ready by the end of March. So you have the month of April to shop, and then you can stop by Penguin Court that first weekend of May and pick up your plants. Next, please. Here's a beautiful photo of the conservatory that was built in the 1980s. It was designed by Milton Shawless of the Shawless Group in Ligonier. You can see, it doesn't show in this photo, but trust me that it looks like a plus sign from the sky. There's 4 wings that come off of this building, with 3 being under glass and 1 being a little kitchenette. And this is really the space that I use to do programming when we have activities for the public on the property. If you go to the next slide, please, you'll see what the interior of what I consider our classroom to be, which is a fantastic space to learn about whatever one of our hot topics of the month might be. But it is a little limiting space-wise because I always think of inclement weather. Where are people going to go? Where will we have shelter? And once you get 10, 15 people in this space, we're all pretty cozy. So any of the programs that I do on the property, we do require registration for, simply because we're limited on space and parking. Please. We do a lot of programming out in the community as well. Here are some pictures of activities we've done elsewhere or also in the conservatory. Brandywine hired me in 2018 to begin doing programs on the property or out in the community on behalf of Brandywine. And one of our keystone projects is the Pennsylvania Master Naturalist Program. Mary, if you go to the slide, Pennsylvania Master Naturalist is not the same as Penn State's Master Gardener Program. It's its own organization, but it's similarly styled in that participants go through a 12 or 13-week core training that we hold at Penguin Court in the fall. And then they have to complete so many hours of advanced training and approved community service to earn and then maintain their certification as a master naturalist. So this is something that we'll be doing again this fall. And if it interests you, I'm happy to talk to you about that, or you can go to pamasternaturalist.org. We will begin accepting applications for the fall training probably by the end of March. So check that website then. Also, I always like to give a shout out to the Thomas Road Farm. This is 141 acres. There sadly is no infrastructure on the property, no electricity, water, sewage. We just have the barn that is pictured here. And when I was hired, this was still being actively farmed by a gentleman who leased the property to grow corn and soybeans. But he retired, I think, a year after I got there. and it's just been lying fallow for now. And I think at some point we would like to lease it again or maybe do something with the property. But Brandywine's focus has been Penguin Court and bringing that up to snuff until that's in place. Thomas Road will just kind of wait. And of course, Brandywine's vision for the property is maintaining it with minimal intrusion because that's what Mr. Scaife wanted. And so we do operate it, like I said, as a private preserve so that all that wildlife that we routinely see are comfortable living in that space. I also think it was very smart that Mr. Scaife wanted that 900 acres conserved because it's such an integral part to the Laurel Highlands vibe. You know, green space, open space is so critical to the mountains that we have here and just the landscape and the viewscape that we get to see. So, like I said, we are growing native plants that we will be offering for sale. The property is open for research and education projects. So if you're a professor or grad student and you're looking for a place to, you know, maybe study what kind of life comes back after a stand of ash trees disappears because of the emerald ash borer, you know, we could certainly work with you on that. Next, please. So a lot of times people ask, how do they get to learn about what's going on at Penguin Court? And if you go to the website that's shown here, about halfway down that page is a button you can click to enter your name and email address. And then you'll be on our mailing list to receive our 1 to 2 emails that we send out a month, letting you know what's coming up next. Or you can just go to Brandywine Conservancy's event page, and that will have a list, but it's mixed in with other Brandywine activities. So you kind of have to glean which ones are at Penguin Court or what programs we're doing virtually. So every winter since COVID, we've been hosting a winter virtual series, and this year we've had a birding theme. So on Thursday, 2 days from now, I'll be giving a program about the owls of Pennsylvania. If you live locally here in the Laurel Highlands, I encourage you to visit us at Nature Works, which is an event I coordinate in partnership with the Bottle Works Ethnic Arts Center in Johnstown on March 15th. It's free, it's very family friendly, and it's just a good way to bust that cabin fever that you might be experiencing. Then last year we started a book club that we do every other month because I couldn't commit to reading a book a month, frankly. And weather permitting, it will return to in-person discussion at the conservatory in March. And then our last virtual program for the season will be The Dark Skies Are for the Birds on March 26th. So I believe that's it for slides. What we wanted to do is just, again, introduce you to both the rather significant gift of Richard Scaife to the Brandywine and to Westmoreland, and then elaborate a little bit about Penguin Court, because I know that's still new to a lot of people, so that you can make plans to visit us sometime. So I haven't been monitoring the chat since I've been chatting, but if there are any questions, we can go through and address them now. If something just popped into your head too, please put that into the Q&A.
And while we look at the Q&A, I mean, I know I'm part of this presentation, but I feel like this is just so lovely to be able to understand the vision of Richard Scaife of just preserving art and nature and making it available to the public. You know, we're all 3 different institutions, but we all are so related in so many ways, and especially through this gift. I hope that was made clear to you this evening.
Yes, the marrying of nature and art is core to Brandywine's mission, and this is a perfect way to show how we're accomplishing that.
Oh, I do see a question about Staruka. So the Staruka Viaduct, that's actually almost due north of Scranton, and it's almost on the New York border. So it's sort of a bit in between Scranton and Binghamton, New York. So way up there north.
I see Cynthia asked if Mr. Scaife left bequests for maintenance for each institution, and I can't speak on behalf of the Westmoreland, but I can say for Brandywine, he did leave a rather nice endowment that we utilize to maintain the properties here in Western Pennsylvania.
I don't know if there was any bequest for maintenance of the art, but there were a few works of art that were not by American artists. They weren't particularly significant pieces. And my understanding is that Mr. Scaife allowed for these to be sold by the two museums, and the proceeds then could go toward purchasing other work. So that was also generous, that he understood from his long tenure on the board. He understood that these were museums of American art that wouldn't collect perhaps some of the work that he had collected.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And I echo Mary's sentiment there of just an understanding of how museums work as well through that understanding in the gift.
And Molly's asked if there's a book which shows all the art donated by Mr. Scaife to both museums. I don't think we did not do a catalog for the exhibitions, so.
I like that idea, though.
It is
I
a nice
know.
idea. Yeah.
I will say that I know Brandywine, the majority of our collection is available online. So a lot of the work could be viewed online, but
Yes,
not quite the same as a book that just has this work. So good
correct. Yeah.
suggestion. Good suggestion.
Yeah, and much of our collection is online as well at thewestmoreland.org if you
Right.
want to explore that.
And is Martin Johnson Heat New Jersey Salt Marsh on display? It is indeed. It will be on display through the end of March. We are having a bit of construction being done at Brandywine due to the flood that we had in 2021. So we will be closing our first floor gallery probably around April 1st, possibly till early August. So it may not be on view then for that period from about April to August or early August, but it is on view now through the end of March, and it will definitely come back onto view as soon as that gallery reopens. It's definitely a highlight.
Excellent. Any other questions? We'll give you a minute or two to put them in the chat. And while you think of them, I will say on behalf of Mary and Erica, thank you so much for your interest in tonight's program. We're really delighted to be able to share more information about both the Westmoreland and Brandywine, as well as Penguin Court with you. And again, invite you to all the spaces when we're available so that you can capture that magic yourself.
Looks like that was all the questions. So I'll also say thank you. And I hope folks are able to visit both the museums, and it's definitely worth signing up for a program to be able to see Penguin Court. Very much worth a visit.
Yeah, and I'll also thank you all for being here this evening. And I adore the Brandywine and Penguin Court, and of course my institution, and echo the sentiments of my wonderful colleagues here.